What's up, everybody? It is your pastor, Tucker Mail. Welcome to my home. This is my living room, and I've got to say, since I became the pastor of this church, it was a dream of mine to have everybody over to my house to get to know you and encourage you in the Lord. And logistically, that's never happened because our church can hold more people than our house can. But somehow God has used the crazy circumstances of our world to allow this dream to be realized. You are now in my home, and I am in yours. So thank you for having me. Thank you for hanging in there as the church that we are in strange and kind of unsettling times. I'm so grateful that you're still willing to look to God's Word so that He can give us answers and direction and encouragement, because now more than ever, we need to hear the voice of God for such a time as this. And if you've been joining us, if you're part of our church, if you've been coming to our services or joining us online, you know that we're working our way through the Bible and we're in the New Testament book of Galatians. We looked at the book of Galatians with a focus called people over religion, meaning religion can sometimes be burdensome. Sometimes religious rituals can be more distracting away from God than pointing people to God. And the book of Galatians gives us this freedom to know that where the Spirit of God is alive in someone, they have the connection they need with God apart from so many of the burdens of religion. So been really encouraged by what the Lord has been saying to us through that. We're actually going to take a 1-week detour from the book of Galatians. I'm going to have you turn in your Bibles to the book of Romans in chapter 5. And the reason for this is I just want to speak in real time to something that I find encouraging for where we're at as a culture and a world and even as a church, to look to God's Word to just give us some direction into how we can see all of what's happening as opportunity to become more like Jesus. And Romans chapter 5 is one of those Bible verses that I look to as kind of those emergency situations where you break glass in case of emergency and you pull out what you need, the tools to get you through. Romans chapter 5 is a tool that you can use when life feels like an emergency, because it helps us make sense of those really difficult and trying times that are sure to happen in life. So this may be a season for you that's difficult and trying, and if it's not now, just wait. It will happen. Life gets hard, and God's Word gives us direction, maybe even speaks louder in these kind of times than when everything seems calm and normal and peaceful. And here's what Romans chapter 5 says. Therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we also have access by faith into this grace in which we stand and rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Before we get into what I've prepared for us to be encouraged by in God's Word, I just want to share right out the front, this is the answer for the questions of what to do with the turmoil of life. And the turmoil of this season is really just pointing us to a deeper level of turmoil, and that is, what must you do to be made right with your Creator? You have a soul, you have a purpose, and there is such a thing as eternity. And all of these circumstances in the world right now, the virus and the way that our economy has been shut down and the way that work and life and family all looks different, it's pointing us to a deeper truth, which is this: our days are numbered. And our life is not guaranteed, and our plans are going to fail, and the things that we put our hopes in are going to be uncertain at times. And what we need to know more than anything is, who is the God that made us, and how are we made right with Him? The answer is this: God revealed His love for the entire world through His Son. His Son lived the perfect life, and anyone who believes in Him will not perish, but have everlasting life. That is the gospel as we preach it. And for those of us who are already believers, cling to that. That is the message of your life. That is the foundation of your hope, the grace of God loving you in spite of you. And for those of you who are tuning in right now, and you're wondering, how do I make sense of anything right now? You start by this. You make sense of your relationship with God. You have peace with God through Jesus. Now, in all of that, there is an assurance that comes once we're right with the God of eternity, once we know that our soul is in his hands and that he's really just using our short days that are but a vapor to teach us who he is and how to live for him now so that we can live for him forever, when we realize that, trouble and circumstances in this world take on a different flavor. And that's exactly what we find in Romans chapter 5. As Paul is writing to give the answer to peace with God through Jesus, he says, we rejoice that we have peace with God. But not only that, we also glory in trouble. And we glory when things get hard and difficult because that is when we know what we actually are made of. You want to know what somebody's made of? Do not try to find out in a job interview. In a job interview, everybody is going to show you their very best. And in that 20-minute window where you can ask them questions about who they are and how they'd react to different circumstances, in a job interview, everybody is going to be the best they can be in that certain circumstance to get the job. But you really want to know what somebody's about, and you got to watch them when stuff gets really tough. And if you haven't noticed already, the pressing of the past few weeks as our life has got less and less in our control and more unusual, have you noticed how much you're learning about yourself? Have you noticed how much you're learning about how you really parent your kids when they're around all the time? Have you noticed how much you've really learned about what you trust in as certain circumstances of your life have taken stable things like going to work every day and a paycheck that you can rely on and an economy that's thriving? As those things get taken away, you're learning about yourself. And that's what trouble does. Trouble shows you who you really are. And for the believer, it says that we glory in tribulation because it produces in us perseverance. It teaches us how to keep going. It teaches us how to fight through challenge and difficulty. And then this, perseverance teaches us character. And that is everything that I've just said, the one word to describe who you really are. It's your character. It's not your circumstances. It's not where you sit in your pew on Sunday morning. It's not where you drive your car and park it for 8 hours while you do your work. All of those things are ways that you use your characteristic value to make a living and to go to church. But who you really are is your character. And what God is doing right now through trial and through trouble, and this is the way he seems to always work, is he uses this to pull out of us the character of Christ, teaching us how Jesus would react when things get hard, teaching us what the Spirit in us will do when trouble comes, and we need to be people of Christ-like character more now than ever. When we first got the news as a church that things were going to look really different, as you know, for the past 2 weeks, we have not been attending in our normal way. This is our effort to flatten the curve, to do our best to slow down the spread of a virus that seems to spread best in large gatherings. So based off the wisdom of the authorities and the doctors that are doing their best to lead a country through this, as an institution, as a church that really takes part in large gatherings, we are trying to do our part to not gather in the normal way that we do. We care about the weak among us. We care about those who have weaker immune systems. We care about those who are elderly. That is our mission, is to be defenders of the weak. So things have looked different. And when we first found out that this was going to happen, I met with Pastor Trevor, the executive pastor, and I met with a couple other key advisors, called some elders. We're just trying to find wisdom in all of this. And what I realized very early on is we can do our best to put forth a plan on how to proceed in this, how to best communicate as leaders of our church to all of you who belong to this church, and how to put together a plan that allows us to continue but remain safe and respectable. And in realizing the need for a plan, I also realized something else. More than a plan of what we're going to do, we need a reminder of how we're going to act. And so as we came together, we called a staff meeting. We got all the pastors in, and we did our best to spread out. And the first thing we did as part of our plan was not the strategy. We did not start with strategy. We didn't try to figure out exactly what all of this was going to look like, because as you can tell, this is changing very real time. What we started with was the commitment that we were going to make as pastors and staff and husbands and fathers leading our families in this, on how we were going to act, who we were going to be in this. And so in rolling that out, I put together a couple things that I really wanted to challenge all of us to stay the course in, because the plan's going to change, the strategy is going to change. It's changing week by week. Last week, we were still doing a live service with a band. This week, I'm in my living room. So I put together how we were going to be, and I called that the Corona Creed. Before the plan comes out in the strategy, I passed out a little piece of paper to everybody in that room, and I said, here are the 7 things that we are going to be towards each other. And I'm calling this the Corona Creed so that we can remember as we walk into this, and you keep hearing the word Corona, we are a people that has a creed that lines right up with the tribulation that we're in right now. And I hope this is a way for God to just be working on these amazing characteristics that come out when we look to Jesus as an example on how to be a certain way in a certain circumstance. And we're going to call it the Corona Creed so that we can remember that God uses these challenging times to bring out some really good reminders and some really good lessons. And so no matter how long these new normals last, this is a creed that I'm going to be leading our church in, and a commitment that I'm asking you as believers, as family members of God, the house of God, and as leaders in your household in such a time as this. Here's how you can be a person who leads like Christ, no matter what the strategy for your household and our church is. So I've got 7 things that I'm calling the Corona Creed. These 7 things are all based off examples that I find through the challenging times in the Word. And I hope that as we go throughout our weeks apart, till whenever we can rejoice in a reunion of our church, that you will cling to, not strategies and not plans, but who you are in Christ, knowing that this trouble is producing in all of us character. Here is the way that I'm going to ask you to commit to the Corona Creed with us as a church. Number 1, we are going to be calm. Mark chapter 4 tells us this story of Jesus leading his disciples across a lake. And remember, a lot of the disciples are seasoned fishermen, and yet they find themselves in the middle of a storm that they've never seen before. It's bigger than anything they've seen, and we know that because they think they're going to die. Look what it says in Mark chapter 4, verse 37. A great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. In the middle of a storm, Jesus is sleeping in the cushion of a boat, resting at ease, knowing that at any moment he has the power with a word to calm the storm. And yet, what do the disciples say? They say, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the sea and said, "Peace, be still." You might be feeling this. This is a storm like the world in our generation hasn't seen the likes of. We don't know what it's like for all of the world economies to shut down at once. We don't know what it's like for all of the people who have normal business expectations and jobs and family routines, all of it at once to stop. This is a storm that has potential death for people you may know. This is a storm that will come with sickness and loss of income and loss of assurance. And you may be tempted to think to yourself, do you not care that we're perishing? What I want to remind you of is that Jesus, in the midst of the greatest storm these disciples had ever seen, was calm as someone who is fast asleep, because he was. And at any moment, Jesus has the power to calm the wind and the waves with his word. He is not freaking out because he is still the master of the storm. He's still in control in the midst of all of the chaos around us. He is still a sovereign God who is allowing things to happen so that anyone who goes through this with a desire to know God would find these circumstances to be the very things that bring them to that moment in their life when they are crying out for the Savior. Do you care if I perish? And this is the moment that God will meet those people to say, I've sent my Son into the world that no man would perish. And these circumstances will teach you that your physical life will perish, your plans will perish, the things around you will perish. It's a hard message to preach, but it's an undeniable truth right now. And this is a time to stay calm, knowing that our God is still in control. With a word, he says, peace, and the waves are still. Stay calm because the Spirit of Christ is in you, and he is still in control. So when you come to those moments in your household where you're looking around and the waves seem to be crashing down because your kids are being loud and you're trying to get work done, or your house is a mess because you've been inside all day, or you're wondering what the next 1 week, 2 week, 1 month paradigm of your life is going to look like, here's creed number 1. We are going to be people that through the grace of God that we stand on and the Spirit of Christ in us, we're going to be calm in the midst of a storm. We're going to rest at night, and we're going to keep trusting the God who calms the storm. Number 2 is we are going to be patient. One of the themes of the Bible is that God fulfills his promises, and he moves on a different timetable than we sometimes want. I mean, so many lessons of the Bible is that God is waiting, and he's waiting for the perfect time to do the perfect thing in your life. And one of the reasons that we go through some of these things is to learn to wait on God so that he can teach us that his timing really is perfect. And I bring up the disciples again because so many of their questions and their desires God speaks to in real time, and we can relate to them. And one of their big angsts was that Jesus would come and be the king of the kingdom, and he'd restore the kingdom now. The Roman occupation would be done in the nation of Israel. Jerusalem would be the holy city, and they would sit at the right hand and the left hand of Jesus. And why not have that right now? And in fact, we come to this moment because in Acts chapter 1, after Jesus is resurrected and they look at him and they finally had these infallible proofs that he really is resurrected. He conquered the grave. Surely the mission is complete. Surely now is the time. Look what they say to Jesus in Acts chapter 1. It says, therefore, when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? And what did he say? He said, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father has put in his own authority, but you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. Jesus says, times and seasons are not your business. Those belong to the Father. Wait for the Holy Spirit. And if you're like me, as I try to figure out how to lead our church and give some sort of plan or understanding as to when all of this is going to be over, you probably wish you had better answers. You probably wish you had an answer sooner than later. And one of the things that we're going to that's going to be built in us through this season is we're really going to learn how to be patient, because this could go on for longer than we like. And this might change some things in our day-to-day activities that require us to not only have patience for the way the big answers of this circumstance get solved, but the day-to-day patience that's going to be needed as you're around people that you're not normally around more often. Parents, you need to have more patience when you're with your kids, now more than ever. You need to be willing to use this as a time to allow that Spirit of God in you to slow down and be patient. This is not a normal time. This will pass, but it isn't passing today. And it's not passing in a time that we can know for certain with an exact day and time. So we've got to be patient for however long this new normal lasts. And one way to practice that patience is by every day showing patience to one another. As we learn to rub shoulders in a new way, as we learn to get things in a new fashion, know that God is teaching us this amazing Christ-like characteristic to be patient. Don't be in such a hurry. And that's one thing that I hope that we can all extend to one another, is that we're patient with each other. And that will lead us to number 3 in the Corona Creed, is that we would be flexible. In our patience, there are things that we're waiting for so that we can kind of get back to life as normal. And I got to say that life is not going to go back to normal in every single aspect of your life. I'll always remember September 12th is an entirely different era than September 10th in one way. After September 11th, there were some things that just changed about who we are as a country. And every time I fly, I remember that after September 11th, they made all of these drastic measures to keep the security of the airports as tight as possible. And I kept waiting for those to go back. And one of my favorite things about the airports before September 11th is that you could go right up to the gate. As people were walking off the plane, you didn't have to have a ticket. You could just go right up and meet people as they walked to the plane. I don't know why, but I always loved that as a kid. And after September 11th, that changed. You can't do that anymore. You got to go through security, and you got to have a ticket to get through security. And if you're waiting for that to go back to how it was, you're going to be disappointed because it never will. And there are things about the season of life that we're in right now that won't go back to normal. I don't know what all those things are, but unless you are a flexible person, you're going to be really disappointed time and time and time again. I've had to learn flexibility in leadership. As we got together in the first couple of ways we were trying to respond to this, we made a plan to invite everybody to church as normal. If you're elderly, really take precautions, and for all families, pay attention to your doctor's orders. We came out with a video that Pastor Trevor made, and it was it said exactly what I just said, and guess what happened? The next day, we came out with a video that said we're actually not doing church. Now, that didn't sit well with my heart to lead clearly with vision. But I had to be flexible, and I'm asking you to be flexible as well. I look to the word here because we get a model of being flexible and just living in the Spirit of Christ. So often we want to get our routine down and never break it because we don't like change. But Jesus says that the wind comes and goes as it pleases. Nobody knows where it's coming from. Nobody knows where it goes. So is anybody who lives by the Spirit. And then Paul says in Philippians chapter 4, I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things, I have learned to be full, and I've learned to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. He's essentially saying, wherever I fall on the circumstances of doing really well or struggling, having a lot to eat or not having a lot, and being hungry, doing awesome in everything that I can think of, or really being frustrated by life. He said, no matter what it is, I have learned that I can do all things through Christ. He's basically learned the art of flexibility. He's learned that his circumstances and his wants and his desires and everything that surrounds him is going to change, and he's learned that he can figure it out and do it in Christ. And we've got to learn that for one another. And for this, I can't help but say thank you once again, because the fact that you're tuning in right now and you're willing to watch me preach from a living room in my house, and this is not our normal gathering, and it is not anywhere near, for me, the excitement and the fellowship and the communion that we can find in our normal gathering. But thank you for your flexibility. I got to say, I'm trying to be flexible just in the way that I'm preaching. I miss my pulpit. I miss being with the band and praying before service. I miss greeting every single one of you at the door. But if we're not flexible, we are going to break. And that's why I love that phrase, blessed are the flexible, for they won't break. And I think we can take it one step further to say, blessed are the flexible, for they will not freak out. And I hope that you don't freak out in this time. Be flexible. Plans are going to change. Updates are going to change. We're going to be a church that continually tries to stay up to date with what we need to according to our governing authorities. And who knows what the coming weeks will look like? Who knows what Easter will look like? But what I do know is that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Okay, the next creed is that we are going to be team players. It says in Acts chapter 13, verses 2 and 3, as they ministered to the Lord and fasted, the Holy Spirit said, now separate to me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. Then after fasting and praying, they laid hands on them and sent them away. I love the way God pairs people together that balance each other out in ministry to work together. We know that Paul was the truthful, on it with theology, and he could explain things. He broke things down through the letter. He was happy to call people out if they were burdening people with religion. We see that in Galatians. And then we also see that Barnabas was this awesome encourager. He was always giving his help in any way that he could. And those two guys, I love the picture of how they balance each other out. The encouragement and the truth of them together is what we need. We need to be people who realize that we all have our gifts, and we all have, in ways, sometimes our gifts being weaknesses. If we're all truth with no encouragement, if we're all encouragement with no truth, we got to come together and work together. And then realizing that in all of this, as much as we can give each other preference, as much as we can serve one another, as much as we can use all of this as an opportunity to think, okay, I belong to the body of Christ. How can I be someone who is looking at this as an opportunity to join the team, to help out as I can, to look for those opportunities to be someone that is willing to be an encouragement, willing to offer some wisdom, willing to offer a helping hand. This is a time that is really a dream come true for leaders of the church, because I can tell you, as a pastor of a church, one of the prayers and one of the things you're always trying to process is how can we get the church body to really take part in the mission of the church? How can we be more than a church that has a preacher and a worship band and a team of people that are the team? And how can we break that bottleneck so that we're all part of the team? And I see this as an opportunity for us to start practicing that culture for our church. We are going to be a group of households that take on this entire challenge with a team mindset. We're going to help out around the house. We're going to help out around the neighborhood as we can. We're going to look for opportunities to serve, and we are going to be team players. Now, number 5, we are going to be gracious. Right now, you are going through a time of stretching. Your life is probably a little bit more stressful. Your life is probably a little bit more difficult. There might be a few more anxieties you're thinking about as routines have changed, as you look at the next couple weeks or months, and you have a lot more questions that you have answers. And when that happens, when life gets challenging and stressful, there can be a certain sense of unease that turns into sometimes we're so short with one another in those times. What we've got to remember is that's happening to all of us at once. Your days are a little bit longer. You're a little bit more challenged. You're finding a little bit more anxiety in your heart. Well, so is everyone else, most likely, that you are running across. And the best thing that we can do for one another is to be gracious, to be so forgiving, quick to say, I'm sorry, quick to say, I forgive you, extending each other grace as much as possible. Because if we're not careful, this could be turning into a time where we're not rejoicing in tribulation, we're actually lashing out at one another. And we see the leadership example of Jesus in this as he restores Peter. After Peter denies him 3 times, Jesus raises from the grave. He finds Peter, he pulls him aside, and he says to him a 3rd time, John chapter 21, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And Peter says to him, every time he asks the question, you know I love you, and Jesus says, then feed my sheep. He didn't give up on Peter. He didn't yell at Peter. Peter denied Jesus 3 times on the night that Jesus needed him most. He'd been betrayed. He'd been wrongfully arrested. He's being dragged into a mockery of a trial, and one of his chief disciples is pretending not to know him. And when Jesus finds him, he says, do you love me? And if you do, I have a job for you. And we have to remember this leadership example of Jesus, because so often things can get tough, and trying times, difficult times, can turn us into people who don't act in the way that we should. We're like Peter. We deny ourselves. We deny Jesus. We deny the Spirit of Jesus in us, and we don't treat each other with the love of Christ. But don't hold that against each other. Don't push each other away. Be quick to forgive. Be quick to extend grace. Be quick to point people back to the love of Christ, and be quick to offer the forgiveness that is so readily available in the person of Jesus for all of us, and then through all of us to one another. We are gracious in all of these times. Number 6, be hopeful. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7 say, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to the praise and honor and glory of the revelation of Jesus Christ." I find this verse to be so hopeful because what it says is that we are going to go through these little tests of fire to see what our faith is really about. And when we think about the faith that we have right now, I am so confident and hopeful that the faith that we have in Jesus, who says, "I come to give you life and life more abundant. I come to give you life eternal." He says that he is going to prepare a place for us in heaven. He says that he is coming again to meet us, and he will be the King of kings and the Lord of lords, where every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. And this is a time where we can see other kings and other lords and other confessions of faith are failing all around us. But I find so much hope that in all of this, my heart for the love of God and the hope that I have him isn't being diminished, it's increasing. The genuineness of our faith is coming out of us right now. What do you really believe in? What do you really put your trust in? What are you really hoping for in life? And this is a time where you can be hopeful that there is a God that lives outside of the circumstances of our world, that is still in control. He's a God that loves us. He is a God that is in his sovereignty calm over the storm, and he will cause it to cease in his perfect timing. And in that, he will draw many new people to who he is, that no longer find hope in the hopes of this world, but have hope for the God of eternity that can give them life that goes beyond this life. This is our time to be the most hopeful people in the world. And from our hope, we can actually be the hands and feet of Jesus, knowing that if we've got extra, we can give it away. Knowing that where people are despairing, we can offer them comfort for their soul, comfort for the joy that comes after the pain. We can offer them comfort to know that there is a God who made them, and he made them to go through these circumstances to know him. Finally, we are going to be an example. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, "Imitate me, just as I imitate Christ." One of the things I'm most hopeful in this time is that we get to be people who put all of the preaching and all of the Sunday gathering, all of our praise songs that we keep so organized and tidy on our Sunday morning so often, we now have the opportunity to show the world what we really believe in, to show the people around us who we really are. And to do that not only for the outside world that needs to know the saving grace of God now more than ever, but we get to do that for one another in ways that sometimes doesn't come out in our normal routines, in our busyness of life, and in the safety of a normal church gathering. But now more than ever, we will get to imitate Christ. And in doing that, I want to share with you a quote that I often think of when the news reports aren't great, and you get another headline news feed that says a tragedy has happened in a certain part of the world, something happened at a school again, there's another war that has broken out in a distant part of the world, there's another sickness that is overcoming our world. And when those headlines capture us and we think, man, this is such a challenging time, I always think of this quote. And it's a quote by Mr. Fred Rogers, who is such an encouragement in so many ways. He says this: "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.' To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. And we are born to be helpers because we were created in the image of a God who sent his Son to help all of humanity, to not only help us, but to exchange his life for ours, to lay down his life is the greatest example of love. And we must be people who are the greatest helpers, the hands and the feet of the one who came to pull us out of the depths of the greatest disaster, of a world that could never save itself. And we see such a time as this as our opportunity to say, Lord, if we perish, we perish. But let us be your helpers in this time. So that is the creed that we are going to focus our attention on and commit to as a church family and as the families that you are a part of. I hope and pray that you can use this as a time to each day practice what it means to have character built up in times such as this. And I can't help but notice that there are 7 of these characteristics that we're going to focus on. There are 7 days of the week. Each day, focus on one and allow that to be the theme of your day. Focus on God teaching you how to stay calm, how to be patient, how to be flexible, be a team player, be gracious, be hopeful, and be an example. We do that. Doesn't matter our circumstances. We are going to get through this with worship and joy.